Ramsey. I'm really pleased to welcome Clark Kokich to this webcast. Clark is the chairman of Razorfish, which of course is one of the best-known international digital agencies around. He is also the author of a fabulous new book called Do or Die. Now, Clark, I'd hold up the book, but it's on Kindle. You know how that is.
Yep.
Not much to hold up.
Not much to hold up.
But it is truly one of the best books I've read this year, and it's really, really important in a lot of ways. And I thought for a broadcast audience, a radio audience in particular, this conversation is really going to be important. Also, Clark is, and very few people know this, according to Twitter, Clark is a bad guitarist. And I must say, I'm really happy to hear, Clark, that you're bad at something, first of all.
I'm actually mediocre. Bad might be too strong.
Look at that. You're not even a bad guitarist. I can't even get that out of you. All right, do or die. I think the theme of this book is summed up in the very last sentence in the book, and that sentence is, I used to be in advertising, now I do things. Can you talk about what you mean by that?
Sure. I mean, I've spent my whole life either in agencies or in clients doing marketing and advertising. And, for 50 years, marketing has basically been saying things. Figuring out how to say things with a high degree of cleverness or by just spending enough money that your message gets through. But it's basically talking to customers. And while that's still part of marketing, it's not the whole story anymore. There's this whole other world opening up of actually doing things that matter, building experiences, building applications, building websites, mobile applications, out of home, in store, QR codes. I mean, all the stuff you read about all the time that's growing exponentially. Once you really realize what those tools allow you to do, you start thinking less about what can I say to my customers, and you start to think, what can I do for my customers?
Okay, let's talk about navigating to that place, because as you know, my audience is made up primarily of broadcasters, people who've kind of grown up in the we say, we hope you do model.
Mm-hmm.
How does that audience of broadcasters, and keep in mind, as you know, these people have very strong relationships with consumers, very strong relationships with clients. How do they navigate this transition from say to do?
Well, I'm not in the broadcast industry, so I'm just going to talk as an advertising person and as a consumer of radio or television.
Perfect.
I mean, broadcast is, in a way, is a very intimate medium. You have very strong relationships with customers, either at the program level or at the station level, depending on what kind of organization you run. And if you get up every day and you think, I own a TV station or I own a radio station, I think you're setting yourself up for failure in the long term. If you get up and say, I feel a need in my listeners' or viewers' lives, and can I use all these new digital tools to fill that need in a better, more expressive, more deeper way, then I think it opens up a whole new avenue for exploration and for creating new relationships with those listeners or viewers.
So what you're kind of saying, if I can translate a little bit, is that those who wake up every day thinking I'm in the radio business are technically mistaken, or those who think I'm in the advertising business are technically mistaken, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they're not technically mistaken, but they're severely limiting their future because media habits change, but people's need for information, for entertainment, for involvement in the world around them doesn't change. Mm-hmm. So instead of seeing all these new tools as a threat, which I know a lot of people do, start to think about what can I do for my customers that's unique for them or for my viewers or listeners that would involve both the radio, the television, applications, websites. I think a lot of organizations in the broadcasting space have simply taken what they do in the radio and put it online, what they do on TV and put it online, and said, well, I did that. I'm not sure that works. I'm not sure that pays. And why should it? It's just taking one form of entertainment or information and moving it over to a new medium without really thinking about how that medium works. So I think that's a mistake I see as an advertiser, as an agency buying time. That's a mistake I see a lot of broadcasters making, and I don't see a lot of real originality in thinking about what do these people really need and how can I fill it in a brand new way. There's a lot of room for innovation and imagination now.
Do you feel that we're seeing some of that in the internet radio space from companies like Pandora and Slacker and others, where there's an opportunity to create kind of novel experiences driven by multi-dimensional opportunities, visual, text, audio, all integrated with some knowledge about who that person is at the other end of the communication?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't see any reason why that innovation should just be coming from startups. A lot of the innovation early in e-commerce came from specialized e-commerce companies and startups, but eventually the traditional retailers got the message and aggressively integrated their online and offline presence. And it gave them a real advantage. So there are still companies like Amazon and some specialty retailers that have done well solely online, but the real advantage goes to the companies that have been able to integrate online and offline retail. And I think the same thing is true for broadcasting. The traditional broadcasters, if they think through this sufficiently with enough creativity and imagination, should have the upper hand, as long as they don't bring their old ways of thinking to an entirely new world.
Mm-hmm. Clark, it seems to me that when you talk to a broadcaster, they'll tell you, well, 70%, 80% of our revenue still comes from cost per point buys from agencies done in the traditional manner that's been going on for years. It occurs to me that some of the reason why broadcasters are not more innovative in this regard is actually because they are enabled, if you will, by the agencies who are their clients. Do you see that changing anytime soon?
Well, I mean, that happens in every industry that has a long history of generating cash in a traditional world. New upstart comes along, it takes a lot more effort, complicated technology, high investment, lower return, and you think, why should I do this? If I just keep doing what I'm doing, I'm fine. I'm generating cash. It's all good, and that's fine in the short term. But that's what newspapers did, mm-hmm. And for a long time, newspapers managed to survive and thrive right through the internet revolution until about 2 years ago, and their revenue has fallen off the cliff. Mm-hmm. And the only ones that are doing well at all are the ones that have been able to integrate both online and offline experiences. And I see the exact same thing happening in broadcasting long term.
So does that mean we're going to see a massive shift of advertising dollars from kind of traditional media buying in your thinking to more of a do-based, idea-based distribution of resources?
I do. I just don't know when it's going to happen. It's like any huge transition, a transformative moment in history. After it happens, everybody can say, "Oh yeah, I saw that coming," but nobody's coming. And I think it's just too easy, especially these broadcast companies and advertising agencies are run by people in their 50s and 60s, and they're experts in the business that they're in. And to go into these new worlds means you're not an expert anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's tough for people. It's tough for people at that age, my age, to admit that they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what the future is, that everything's uncertain, and we have to take a lot of risks, make a lot of mistakes, and start over again. Emotionally, that is very hard for people, but I think it's critical.
Agreed. Clark, it seems to me as I read your book, the idea of doing and creating experiences based on having an idea that everyone rallies around and contributes to. That process sounds very clean, but you even point out in the book that it is not necessarily easy. I wonder, what's the best way for someone in the media business who wants to put these pieces together to do? What's the best way for them to approach this process from the beginning?
I think the way to do this is with a design thinking approach, which would be to not sit down and do a traditional kind of strategy analysis, but to really focus on the listeners or the viewers. How are they spending their time? What are they doing? What are the gaps in their information and their knowledge? And to look for ideas from everywhere in your organization. They may come from your technology group, from your advertising group, from your news group. Who knows? But to really focus on, we have these viewers or these listeners out there, and they're trying to redefine the way that they interact with media. We have all these new technologies. Let's really cast a wide net and figure out what can we do that's never been done before? What can we do that's better than Pandora? Let's not call Pandora, see if we can do a partnership. Let's figure out what are the flaws in that model and what could we do better. And it really is a matter of creative thinking and problem solving based on what the viewer or the listener really wants, not what we do now.
It's not about us, the industry, such as we define it. It's about you, the consumer, and you, our client, and how to link those two together, because if we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's going to happen. You either do it or you get it done to you.
You spent a bunch of time in the book talking about the importance of knocking down silos.
Right.
I wonder if you could just spend a moment on that, because like all industries, radio is rife with silos. You know, we put things in little, corners, and they may or may not speak to each other, or they may have the wrong incentives.
Right. So silos work great when an industry is to the point where everything is figured out and you're really just optimizing the execution, but things aren't changing. And broadcast really got to that point where, somebody develops the programs, somebody runs the technology, somebody sells the ads, somebody else counts the money, and there's really not a lot of need for those people to talk to each other too often. But in this kind of a world where everything is fluid, everything is uncertain, those silos are death, because nobody in those existing silos where you have experts in a little area has the job of throwing all that expertise away and thinking about what could we do that's new and imaginative that really matters. And so breaking down those silos and doing cross-functional brainstorming and problem solving is absolutely essential. And that's very hard to do in most companies.
Indeed it is. Now, you spend a lot of the book focusing on the importance of doing versus saying, in the sense of creating experiences versus telling people what they should think or saying a product is great, the traditional role of advertising. Does that imply that there's no role at all for saying anymore? What is the role for that kind of blind, deaf messaging to a large number of people to communicate some message? What's that role today?
So there's no question there's still a time when you're going to want to run paid advertising. And I think the best test is, do I have something to say? Do I have something meaningful to say about my product or service that is relevant? And then it's a great idea to pay to reach your best customers with that message. Too often, I think, though, companies don't really have anything to say, but say it anyway. They just get out there and think, we've got to advertise. Our product is commoditized. We don't have any differentiation in the marketplace, so let's spend more money advertising. The solution is to go back and think, hey, before we spend a lot of money telling this story that doesn't exist, let's fix the story. We like to talk in our business about us being storytellers. I think we need to be story fixers as well.
And you also talk a lot about that story being baked into the product, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the product in the past was just the thing itself. Now it's the thing along with the digital experience that surrounds it.
Clark, I want to just read one paragraph to you from the book and see if you want to elaborate on it, because I thought it was just marvelous. Marketers can no longer just say, buy our thing, it's great. Instead, they have to do or risk their very existence. They must do genuinely helpful deeds for customers. They must do whatever it takes to encourage prospects to fulfill a dream, where the marketer's product takes on a supporting role. They must do what good friends have always done: conserve, support, sympathize, and cheer on.
Yeah, I don't know what I can add to that. I just think, the way I think about it is, it's not just about brand perception anymore. It's about brand reality. And as marketers, we've pretty much let the store people run the stores, and the product development people make the product, and the manufacturers manufacture it, customer service it. And then we just went out and kind of put lipstick on the pig. And we really were in the brand perception business, but now I think marketers are in the brand reality business. We have to get in there and do something that really matters. And if we don't, somebody else will.
As you say in your book, it's about the pig, not the lipstick.
Exactly.
Clark Kokich is the author of a fabulous, fabulous new book that I highly recommend called Do or Die. He is the chairman of Razorfish, one of the best-known digital agencies in the world. Clark, thank you so much for leading this vanguard and for being my guest today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.